Well, congratulations, Dustin. That was an incredible showcase. I don't really know where to start. Let's get you to introduce yourself first and what your role. We know who you are, but for the two people in the audience that might not know, tell us who you are and your role on the movies, please.
Sure. So my name is Dustin Curtis Murphy. I was the writer, director, producer, and also editor on the film.
Hi, I'm Joshua Carrington Birch. I was the cinematographer and producer on the film.
Hello, I'm Ailish Symons and I played Orla Miller.
Thank you. Welcome, all of you. Let's start with Everything Is Out to Get Me, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's this extremely forceful, compelling story that speaks to mental health.
Mm-hmm.
It speaks to potentially childhood trauma, abuse, neglect, and potentially borderline disorder, personality disorder,
Sure.
which manifests itself as domestic abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Where does this story come from?
Oddly enough, this short film in particular is strangely probably the most personal to me out of my body of work. Something that probably not a lot of people know about me is that I am a survivor of domestic abuse, and so kind of going through those experiences and meditating on them and the confusion that surrounds that is what sparked the film, and I did find it to be a very cathartic process. When you are a survivor, it brings a lot of fear and insecurity and confusion around the process, and I would say, creating the film helped me gain some clarity.
That's lovely, thank you. That's a candid answer. So we got Erin, the character of Erin, and it intrigues me. She quotes from the Bible. She makes a clear quote from Matthew 12. I am correct there, I believe, about unclean spirits, which are demons, about possession. Is this correct? Am I speaking to it? Where does this come from? Where does this come? We've got domestic abuse. We've got potential of her being neglected in her childhood. But why this introduction of the potential of possession? Is it because it was set back in the 50s and that was potentially the way they were looking at mental health issues then?
Well, if you do go back in time, there's a lot of different explanations for different things, and I think, unfortunately, a lot of people in the past who were struggling with their mental health might have been called demon-possessed. So that is a part of it, for sure. Sure, we're candid. I think, to be completely honest, with dealing with my own experience of domestic abuse, my my ex-wife, who kind of the character is based upon, gave me the revelation one day that demons sent her to destroy my life, and that's why she was sent to marry me. And it was kind of a very strange, confusing time. Somebody who comes from a religious background, if you hear that, it kind of really builds upon your insecurity, and it takes a lot of processing to pick the pieces together between the mental health issues and then what is the supernatural. And I find anytime you're kind of following a supernatural line of thought, it's never clear-cut. There's always confusion. It's never black or white. There's more like, oh, what if? Is there something deeper, to the issue, or is it literally just a mental health issue? And that's why I never really wanted to go the Exorcist route with it. I never wanted there to be levitating bodies or anything that was overtly supernatural. I just wanted that lingering question to be in there, because I think that's probably the most human, is anybody who might have had a supernatural experience before. I mean, none of us can make any sense of any of them, so that's really what I wanted to show.
Lovely, thank you. Why the 50s then, other than the potential way of treating something that was a mental health condition?
Yeah, I do think obviously the way that they would treat that back then, I think somebody today, wouldn't be given the electric chair. So really grounding the film in the tragedy of it, I think the period really allowed for that. And, it obviously just made for a very rich visual landscape. And Yeah, I think if you were to modernize it, you'd have to treat the subject matter extremely differently, just because of how far society has moved along in our conversation about mental health.
Absolutely. You also address, unless it's just me, I don't think it is, the potential way of dealing with somebody that commits a crime that has mental health issues.
Right.
What's your thoughts around that, if you don't mind sharing that?
Sure. Well, I mean, again, that's also part of the period. I mean, I think the penalty, back in the day, and I mean, I think the further you go back, the worse it gets. But for me, I think one of the big points of the film is, if you're in love with somebody who has mental health issues, that love never goes away. So even though the character does, some things that are deeply disturbing and criminal, I don't think her ex-partner ever really stops loving her. I think he just has to separate himself from her, for his own sanity. Yeah, I don't know. Does that answer your question properly?
That's great. Joshua, if I can bring you in. Was this the first time you'd shot on film? And could you tell us the obvious challenges with a low budget that presented?
Yes. So it was my first time shooting on film. In terms of the challenges, I'm quite fortunate in that I work with quite the same crew quite frequently, and they both, my gaffer and focus puller, have a lot of kit themselves. So in terms of the budget constraints of that, I've got in a fortunate position where they can help me out. Originally, we did plan it for a 1-day shoot. It quickly became a 2-day shoot, but that was a good learning curve. And I think once we'd shot 1 day of it, everyone was pretty into the project and pretty willing to give up their time to do it again on the second day.
Okay, thank you. But within the limitations of the budget, you are going in there with the expectation, I need to shoot at a certain ratio or else we're going to run into trouble.
Sure.
So does that get compensated by more rehearsals with the actors? Is that the way you play it?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, one of the interesting things is we would always do rehearsals before everything to make sure that we got it, so that when we would run the camera, it would be ready to go. And one of our rehearsals was perfect, and then ironically, it took us 3 takes to repeat that.
But I think that was the only one. Most of it was rehearsed well, and then they delivered whether it was actor performance or camera technical, it married up most of the time, but there was just that one shot, wasn't it?
And nothing was more than 3 takes. So yeah, rehearsal time for sure.
Great, thank you. Ailish, if I could bring you in. How do you prep for a character that has to find this deep awareness, this complexity that you may not be able to relate to in any way, shape or form? How do you prep for that as an actor?
I mean, for me, I wasn't used to playing characters like this. So when Dustin presented this character to me, it was like a gift, to be honest, from an actor's point of view, because it meant that I could delve into something, go places where I never thought I'd go, and hit on a level that I kind of didn't think I'd be capable of. And the way Dustin had, he sent me some storyboard shots and some references, and then he said 16mm film, so I was like, I'm in. And then, I'm from a theatre background, and so rehearsal is definitely part of my process. And so I knew that Dustin was going to be doing that as well. I didn't feel scared about doing it. I felt really excited and grateful that I could delve into something, just to sink my teeth into a character like Erin. From a work point of view, I really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And staying with you just for a moment, you've worked in theatre, you just disclosed you've been in theatre, you've worked on film. Mm-hmm. What direct, obviously you're going to say this man's amazing, which he's proved he is.
He's useless.
For sure.
What style do you personally respond to actor-director relationship? What gets the best out of you as an actor?
I suppose, I don't know, I guess rehearsal does help. Getting along with people as well really helps. And I think Dustin is, apart from being a brilliant director, he's also a really nice person. So that's always a plus. Yeah.
No, that's great. So more of the gentle, sort of not shouting approach.
No, and although like you were very generous with, you know, hearing our points of view and like our ideas and stuff, I kind of felt safe because I knew you had a very clear idea, Dustin, of what you wanted. So then I felt like I was in a safe space that we could talk about where should we push this, knowing that you knew what you wanted, if that makes sense. You know, we weren't just like fumbling in the dark and kind of thinking, oh, let's try this out and hoping for the best. Like it was quite clear what results you wanted, Dustin. So that was good for me because I knew then where to aim.
So, I mean, the best thing you can do as a director is just cast the right people in the role and then get out of their way. You know, if I'm really involved in trying to mold a lot of the performance on set, and if I spend a lot of time with you on set trying to draw what I need out of you, it's more of the sign that maybe you weren't the right person for the role. If I get out of your way and you're just delivering what you need to deliver out of the get, I think that's a real sign of the strength of the actors. And that, I mean, I'll be perfectly honest, that was the case with almost every actor that you saw on that screen today. Was people you just get out of the way, and then sure, I can take the credit for directing them, but I just didn't micromanage them.
No, certainly you've cast some incredible actors there. So, but just come back to the 16mm, and obviously you touched on almost the kudos attached to being in a movie that's shot on film. Why? Why film as opposed to digital?
Well, I mean, obviously last year is when we shot Coyote. So Coyote was shot before Everything Is Out to Get Me, and I didn't need to shoot a short film last year, but then Josh was kind of the catalyst for it. He, you know, as a DOP, wanted to have 16mm on his reel, and he said, "Let's shoot something on 16mm. You can do whatever you want." So I said, "Okay, great. I'll do whatever I want."
I'm pretty sure it started as like a 2-minute project and then escalated as it always does.
Fantastic. So specifically in regard to this movie, do we have any questions from the audience? Down the front? Just down the front here. Come on, Spence.
Hi. For your short, you chose a narrative form which was quite unusual. I actually, towards the end, I just wanted to see the extended version of this. To see what happened, what made them like this, and so
Sure.
very successful. Why did you choose that way of having her communicate with us, narrating the story?
Narration throughout the entire thing. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, there's the literary form of the untrustworthy narrator, right? It's somebody who's you're telling the story from the perspective of somebody, and then one of the things that was always so interesting to me is you start out empathizing with Erin, and you really believe that she's the victim in the entire situation, and then you really believe that her partner is the person who is, you know, being abusive, and then as you go throughout the piece, her words don't line up with her actions. And then you start to feel a little uncomfortable to where you're like, well, I side with her because of what she's telling me and the story that she's telling, but the actions aren't lining up with the words. And then obviously there's that flip. So that was always part of the concept from the get-go, is it's told from her perspective. She might not be seeing, the full reality of her own actions. And, you know, there's kind of this taboo in screenwriting that says, narration is sloppy writing, you shouldn't do narration, a little bit more of like, the Robert McKee style of things, and I just think that's ludicrous. I think some of the best films that have ever been made have had narration in them, some of my favorite for sure. I mean, I always love a good twist, and Fight Club was a good example and massively influenced me. And so it was very just essential to me that it was told from her perspective, and when you add narration on the top of a story that you're telling visually, it doesn't become like a lazy cop-out as an excuse to tell your story. It becomes a flavor that provides you more depth, to where if I were to expand that into a feature, I probably wouldn't need to do narration because I would have the time to explore the nuance. But if I'm going to get that story into 8 minutes of time, you have to have the narration, or you're just going to be confused as an audience member. And on the plus side of it, shooting on film, we didn't have to record any natural sound, so because film cameras can be quite loud. Yeah.
Any more questions? No? Okay. Well, we'll move on to Coyote,
Sure.
if that's okay. A character-driven narrative that, through the device of teleportation, speaks to human trafficking and sexual slavery.
Yeah.
As well as immigration, of course.
Yeah.
It talks to the rapidly progressing situation we're in regarding technology. And the potential dangers of that, the Pandora's box that we're opening. Where does this come from? Why are you passionate about that subject?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first spark was, the science fiction edge of it. It was, okay, teleportation is this brand new technology. I think when there is a lot of new technology, a lot of people, especially the inventors of that technology, always focus on the utopian aspects of it, of this new technology is going to solve all our problems and it's going to be so much better. But then every time a new technology is unleashed, it quite quickly just gets exploited by the darker sides of humanity. And I always just thought of, if let's just think of it logistically, right? If anybody can get anywhere at any time that they want, how would that logistically affect things? I mean, could terrorists teleport into Parliament and blow it up? Could refugees be exploited in that way? And kind of one of the answers that I put around it is so much in the real world is based on income inequality. So if you take the most vulnerable and you put a monetary value to teleportation, means the further you can go, the more expensive it is. So how would poor, vulnerable people be exploited by this technology, and how would those who have all the power and all the wealth, how would they use it to their own advantage? That was kind of the ethos of it, and I think the big kind of catalyst moment was the Jeffrey Epstein scandal with Ghislaine Maxwell, and just how many powerful people that they rubbed elbows with. I mean, if you're unfamiliar with the story, I mean, it's this rich guy in America who was rubbing elbows with presidents, Republicans, Democrats, Trump, Clinton, everybody, and everybody would reportedly go to his island, and then he was exposed as a human trafficker. And there's just something to me about the irony of politicians who tell you that the immigrants are the bad guys, and they do this divide and conquer strategy that says, let's keep all the poor people fighting amongst themselves, and so they don't point the finger at us, when really a lot of the people at the top are the people who are perpetuating the problems and exploiting people, and quite frankly aren't that nice of people a lot of times. And that's what I wanted to expose with the film.
You did it excellently. So you're interweaving technology and vice into the story. Looking back, what's inspired you? What movies? I mean, I got the feeling of there was Orwell's 1984, and
Sure.
there was Patrick McGowan's The Prisoner in there. What's inspired you from the past, movies and directors?
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, it's not always just movies and directors. It's also literature as well. I'm a massive fan of Brave New World, massive fan of 1984, massive fan of Fahrenheit 451. So these really classic dystopian stories that, I mean, I think sci-fi fantasy is great. It's good to have that escapism, but all the pieces that always really resonated with me were sci-fi used as social commentary. Planet of the Apes, Clockwork Orange, Children of Men. These are all films that I really leaned heavily upon from a writing standpoint, but then the visual references were more varied away from sci-fi as well, because it's a very grounded, almost drama-esque sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. So Joshua, any challenges as a DOP on this project?
Anything easy?
Yeah, I mean,
difficult.
I think the number of crew, particularly in the big house where we filmed, it was a big sort of mansion, and we were putting lights through second floor windows, and we actually only had at the time one gaffer and one spark, which, as you can imagine, is quite difficult. So that was probably to be honest, that was probably the most difficult thing. Camera crew, we were a little bit more equipped, but I think it's just the number of bodies. And I think that this was obviously both of our first features, and then until you do one, there's stuff you just wouldn't know or wouldn't learn until you've kind of done it as well.
Budget.
Yes.
You've disclosed the budget. Are you okay sharing that here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
One of the things is, we have now distributed the film. We have our distributor and our sales agent on board, so any filmmakers in the audience, don't disclose your budget until you've sold it. Once you've sold it, you can disclose your budget. And a budget is something that is constantly growing as well, and that was one of my big learning curves, is, I knew what it would take to make the film. But then, as a first-time filmmaker, there's all these things that come toward the end, right? Clearance reports from the legal side of things, and E&O insurance, and the fact that the production is also going to cover some of the costs of PR and some of the costs of marketing, and these things. I think, as an indie filmmaker, I always thought that I make the film, somebody else buys it, and then they're going to exploit it and do whatever they want with it. But in my experience with our distributor who came on board, which is Gravitas Ventures, the largest distributor in North America, and they're acting as our international sales agent as well in other territories. So, so the budget is something that is constantly growing. So I can tell you what we spent on it so far. We're going to continue to, spend some more on it. But the production budget of what we spent to shoot the film before anything else was about $46,000.
Okay, so can you give some advice to any people that were at that level trying to seek funding for a feature on how to go about it? Should they be putting a deck together? What should they be doing?
Yeah, a deck helps. So I come from the world of short film. I've crowdfunded before, and I think crowdfunding works for some people, but it is a massive difference when you're going out to investors and saying, hey, do you believe this project will make money? You're no longer, asking for charity. You're saying, believe in this, and here's the deal. You're going to make all your money back, plus you're going to make this percentage. So there's people who wouldn't give me, £5 to make a short that gave me $5,000 to make this feature. So that's a big part of it, is them believing in the commercial viability of your project and that you have a business plan in mind to recoup their money. And obviously, if you can convince your financiers that you're going to keep costs down while you're also keeping the production value very high of how it looks great on screen, then people are going to come on board and say, wow, this looks like a great investment.
Mm-hmm. So we've got this at times abrasive, sort of oppressive score by Jasper.
Yeah, Jasper, who's in the house. Yeah, Jasper.
Woo! Super score. How do you work with your composer? Do you wait to get an assembly, or further even along the cut, or is it happening piecemeal?
So, I like to get musical very early on, to where I will assemble a playlist when I'm writing, and I will oftentimes listen to that playlist, with songs on repeat as I'm doing the writing process. I am a musician, a bit more of a hobbyist musician than anything professional, but I think music, it's interesting because I'm an American filmmaker, and there's a big difference between American filmmaking and British filmmaking in the sense that American filmmakers are going to use all the tools to manipulate an audience's emotions to get them to feel something. We're going to, really do some weird camera angle that is a bit twisted. We're going to swell the music and try to make you cry and really manipulate your emotions. And since I moved over to the UK, I've really noticed that a lot of British cinema is more about being understated, and it's more like, I'll put a camera in the corner of the room, I'll let the actors play out their scene, I won't put any music behind it, and I'll let the audience decide how they feel about it. For me, it's the emotive side of a score that I'd like as many people in the audience to walk away with the same experience rather than different experiences. And it's the emotional tone that I go for with my composers. It'll be like, this is how I want this scene to make me feel. Here's another piece of music that makes me feel that way. See what you can do with that. But I don't want to get so micromanagey to where I would be like, use this chord and, make something that sounds exactly like this. It's more, make me feel this way.
But you certainly did do those long takes where you allowed the music to inspire the emotions from us.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely did. Audience questions in regard to Coyote, please. One down the front. Down the front, please.
First of all, absolutely brilliant film.
Thank you very much.
So, if you could teleport yourself anywhere, and this goes for everyone, where would you teleport to and why?
Oh, someplace tropical. I'd like to be on a beach. I like Tahiti, Hawaii, someplace like that with a Mai Tai or a daiquiri in hand.
Sounds good.
Where are? Oh, I don't know, off the top of my head. Maybe New Zealand.
Oh.
Yeah, I was thinking Australia. I have a friend living over there, and I keep saying to her every year that I'll go, but it's so expensive. So, yeah, hope we go there.
Good question. Any other questions?
Oh, so quiet.
Oh, so we got someone in the back.
While I'm walking, sorry if I missed it. Was that Dungeness at the start?
That was Dungeness. The opening scene was all
Was it
Dungeness.
expensive to shoot that, or did you just steal it?
No, you can't really steal it. They monitor it way too much, and obviously we're running around with guns and stuff like that. So we wanted to make sure we had the proper permits. If we were doing maybe a more low key scene where people weren't being murdered on the beach, we maybe could have gotten away with it.
We had a crane as well, so it wouldn't have been easy to hide that.
But yeah, to answer your question, I think they charge about $5,000 a day.
Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day and they're saying how incredibly expensive it was to shoot that.
Yeah, about $5,000 a day.
Okay, and I've got this question for you.
Well, so with Coyote in the film, they sort of covered some components in terms of like the culture of that setting where a lot of the activities took place. And I just wanted to ask, was that intentional to portray like that culture where it kind of normalized the escalation of that events and activities, right? Someone who was doing chores and how they were then maybe lured into more deeper acts and services that they were going to take. So it was an intention to portray that, how that kind of was normalized, sort of a tool to kind of sway people to sort of progress their activity within that setting.
You're talking more about the coercion of the girls.
Yeah, the coercion of the
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times, with on-screen depictions of abuse and, pimps, prostitutes, things like that, it's a bit comical in comic book a lot of times. And I think if you look at it from a more psychological perspective, it's a lot more insidious, the coercion is, and that's something that me and Ailish worked on quite a bit, doing research into coercion and narcissistic abuse, but specifically covert narcissism. So people who start chipping away at your confidence and crossing boundaries little by little. So it's not one of those things to where, you're kept in a cage and then, you're forced to do sexual things that you don't want to do. To me, it was always very important that she was trying to play these mind games of like, oh, well, you're just doing, you're in control of this. If you don't feel like doing this, you don't have to do it. But she was always manipulating the situation into a way where that's really the only choice she was going to make. I mean, she was in love with, her partner. She wanted to save her partner. So it was like, well, I need the money. So of course I'm going to be doing this. So it's those mind games in particular that abusers play that is so much more realistic than girls in cages. I don't know, Ailish, do you have anything?
Yeah, just to add to that, like preying on the vulnerable. Like they were in a bad situation when they got to Orla's house and she knew that, so it was easier for her to manipulate and dominate that way, and be their best friend to begin with, to love and adore them and make them think that she's on your side when actually, she's just leading them down a very dark path.
Back to me then.
We got
another question. Oh,
got
suddenly
3
we've got
now.
4 hands up. That's great.
People are brave.
Yes.
Hi, just a question for Ailish. Is that correct?
Yep.
Coyote was obviously before the second film, which you really liked. When you got the script from Dustin for Coyote, what was it about the script that attracted you to want to do this role? And then how did you go about preparing for that?
Right.
And do you have any insights from that you learned from working with the other actresses? Because it was a fantastic little cast, and it did feel very sort of constrained that there was this control going on. And I just wanted some insights about what made you take on this role, what your prep was, and what sort of how it was working on set in the scenario.
Well, up until, Coyote was at the beginning of 2022, and so it was around Christmas 2021 when Dustin approached me, and we had a chat about the film, and up until this point, I had only played, well, apart from once when I was 11, I played The Bad Seed. It's an old film. Anyway,
I
but
love
then
that film.
after
Gotta watch
that,
it. It's great.
So since then, so from the age of 12 onwards, I was playing the nice character, the victim, the damsel in distress type characters. And so when Dustin approached me with this character of Orla Miller, it was so far from what I had been doing, but I really liked that you believed in that character, that it was somewhere in me that I could dig up. And so we did a lot of talk about the narcissism, about Ghislaine Maxwell as well. So I kind of watched a lot of videos, and it was heart-wrenching and very horrible and uncomfortable at times, but in order to play the character, it was necessary, and I really wanted to do it, and I wanted to portray this character not in a comical way, and I didn't want to overdo it. So it was just getting that balance, I guess, and I think rehearsal helped, and also just talking, and if I had any questions, I'd ask Dustin. Then being in that mansion was brilliant because we also stayed over there, so we'd film there, but we'd also eat together, and then after, we'd wrap that day, we'd still be in that house. So it was very close-knit, and it was lovely actually, because it meant that I wasn't arriving on set and people thought that I was the baddie. It was nice to show that I'm not a baddie all the time.
And just to add to that, so I saw Ailish in a short film that she wrote and directed, or just directed? Wrote and directed as well. I wrote the part for her, so I approached her and I said, I wrote this role, you're the only person I have in mind for it, would you consider doing it? And the big thing that made me think that she was the right person to play the role is I wanted somebody who had that softness, who could let you in. Because if the character is too harsh and too hard to begin with, and you're too suspicious of her too early, then it doesn't quite take you on that journey. So you needed somebody who could have that range to play empathetic and nice and sweet, and somebody who very clearly plays crazy so well.
Who knew?
I've got one last question. Somewhere around here I saw a hand.
So you kind of touched on this already, but as a member of the audience watching the film, you play around with time and what you feel.
Sure.
Parts of the story. And I'm curious to know how it was shot. Was it shot chronologically? And then also, Ailish and the rest of the cast did such a good job at kind of, there's something to the acting. There's a lot of stuff that isn't said. There's a lot of undercurrent underneath. And I wonder how it was shot and how you kind of managed to have that line in the way that you did throughout the process.
Yeah, well, it would be an absolute luxury to shoot chronologically, but I think unfortunately that just isn't the reality of indie filmmaking. I think if you have a big budget, you can do that, but in indie filmmaking, you might have a location for a day, you might have a location for 2 days, you have to get everything done in that period of time, so if you're bouncing between a lot of different places, you can't do that. So we shot some of the most intense scenes first. We shot all the stuff that was kind of in the love nest of Mr. Blue first. So some of the brutal scenes were our first day, the rape scene was our first day, and then we went into most of the mansion stuff. It was our goal to try to get all of the mansion done in 5 days. That quickly became obvious that it wasn't possible, which my AD, Top, told me from the get-go, but I didn't listen because I was going to try anyways. Thank you, Top. So we did kind of a 5-day unit with getting as much of the house stuff as possible, the manor. Then we went into all of the squalor stuff. We shot the squalor over 2 days. Then we shot the scene where she's cleaning the apartment over 1 day. Then we went back to the house for 2 more pickup days. And then our final wrap day was the opening scene on the beach.
No, we had 1 more day in the Scholar. We went back to the Scholar.
Oh, we did. We did have to go back to the Squalor as well for some pickups due to we didn't back up a SD card, so we lost some footage and had to go back and redo it, which was great, which is a blessing in disguise because we were able to shoot more coverage than we would have had otherwise. So it was a blessing in disguise, even so.
It was tough though because we didn't have a script supervisor on this, so it was kind of everyone jumping in, mixing in to kind of keep us on track with continuity between the scenes.
Yeah, and being an editor as well, the only way we were able to shoot the film on such a tight budget and tight schedule was because I didn't shoot anything that I had suspicions would end up on the cutting room floor. I didn't allow myself that room for, playing around in experimentation. It was very tactical and almost military-like. We're going to go in, we're going to get this shot. How can I get this scene in the fewest amount of shots possible? Because you need to make sure that you walk away with a complete story, and you have a limited time to do that. When it came to the short, Everything Is Out to Get Me, it was more, I want to throw everything I can at it with, complex angles and all this stuff. Let's really take our time to perfect things. The other one was more always going to the common denominator of what is the easiest way to tell this story.
Thank you. We've got a wrap. So sorry.
No, it's fine.
We've got to finish. I guess we could have gone on for a bit longer there. Ailish, Joshua, Dustin, thank you so much. Fantastic show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming, guys. Really appreciate you guys coming.